The Eight Immortals Travel East Chapter 35.
Imagine sitting down for a casual board game. Just a friendly rivalry.
Right, just testing your strategic mind against a peer.
Exactly. But as the game progresses, one player starts losing ground. Defensiveness kicks in.
The argument escalates.
Yeah, and finally someone just snaps and flips the board. I mean, it's a familiar, very human moment of frustration, right?
Absolutely. We've all been there.
But in the scenario we are examining today, flipping that board does not just ruin a Tuesday night. It triggers an actual real-world military conflict that threatens to topple a dynasty.
It is honestly wild.
We are exploring a fascinating excerpt from Chapter 35 of the classic Chinese text Journey to the East. Specifically, we're focusing on an episode titled Iron Crutch Angrily Scolds Dongbin.
And the mission is to look beyond the surface narrative of battling immortals. We want to examine a really compelling paradox.
Right, how a petty, almost laughably trivial argument between allegedly enlightened beings escalates into a supernatural proxy war. We are going to unpack the subversion of Taoist immortal tropes, exploring how these figures maintain incredibly human egos.
And how they weaponize cosmic law for personal grievances. Plus, all the bureaucratic maneuvering that leaves the fate of mortals hanging in the balance.
Okay, let's unpack this, because it all starts with a simple game of chess.
It does. The text drops us directly into the friction. We open on two immortal beings, Iron Crutch and Thongli.
Right.
And they are in the middle of a chess match, intensely arguing over who is winning and losing. What's fascinating here is the traditional context of game playing among Taoist immortals.
Because usually it's pretty serene, right?
Exactly. I mean, in classical Chinese literature, games like Weiqi or chess are often depicted as exercises in mental cultivation. They're supposed to represent a deep understanding of cosmic balance, the flow of qi, and just, serene detachment from worldly outcomes.
Yeah, you usually see tropes of immortals playing chess in the mountains for decades.
Right, completely oblivious to the passage of time. But Journey to the East subverts this entirely. The author gives us two enlightened beings who are completely absorbed in a petty rivalry.
Just bickering over dominance rather than meditating on harmony.
Exactly. Their immortal status hasn't erased their pride at all. It has merely provided a larger stage for their egos. And then they are interrupted when another immortal, Elder Guo, arrives from outside.
And he immediately calls them out, right?
She does. He invokes a historical precedent. He reminds them that the last time there was discord between master and apprentice over a chess game, it caused a massive disaster. So he asks why they're repeating this dangerous pattern.
That invocation of precedent is what really grounds this in a bureaucratic reality for me. I mean, Elder Guo is not just asking them to keep the noise down. He is pointing to a structural failure.
Yeah, it is a much bigger institutional issue.
Reading this, I was struck by how it mirrors institutional dysfunction. You have these ancient figures who are supposed to be the stewards of cosmic order.
And they are completely oblivious to the chaos brewing outside their immediate sphere of influence.
Right. They are actively ignoring the broader implications of their own interpersonal dynamics. I mean, it's like two senior executives bickering over a ping pong game in the break room while the whole company is in crisis.
That is a great comparison.
So why is it that these allegedly enlightened immortal beings are still getting so worked up over a game?
Well, what's fascinating here is how the text immediately grounds these divine figures in relatable human flaws. Their immortal status hasn't erased their egos. It has just amplified the consequences of their squabbles. Iron Crutch, for example, is still clutching his chess pieces, completely oblivious. He looks up at Elder Gao and asks what huge disaster he is even talking about.
He is completely isolated in his own grievance.
He really is. And this brings us crashing out of the celestial realm and down to the mortal battlefield.
I want to look at the sheer scale of what happens next, because Elder Guo drops a bombshell. He explains that this current friction traces back to a previous argument.
Right, where Zhongli and another immortal named Dongbin had a disagreement.
And Dongbin refused to accept Zhongli's reasoning. His reaction to losing that argument was to angrily descend to the mortal realm.
Dongbin's descent represents a catastrophic breakdown of celestial protocol. He does not just go down to the mortal realm to cool off.
No, he actively interferes in mortal warfare just to process his bruised ego.
Exactly. He throws his support behind a foreign ruler, Empress Shao, and paints himself as the military strategist for her army.
Wow.
And to understand the mechanics of what Dongbin is doing, we have to look at the resources he brings to this mortal conflict. The text mentions he takes a Chun tree spirit to act as his general.
Wait, a tree spirit?
Yeah. In Taoist animism, ancient elements of nature, like a centuries-old chun tree, accumulate massive amounts of yin and yang energy over time. Eventually, they gain sentience and formidable spiritual power.
So Dongbin is essentially hijacking this natural ancient power.
Right, and drafting it into human warfare. He is binding the sentience of the natural world to serve a mortal political agenda.
Which is a massive transgression of the natural order.
Huge transgression.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Dongbin pairs this animistic general with a massive esoteric trap called the 72 Heavenly Gate Array, and he sets this up in Nine Dragon Valley.
Right, and when we read about a 72 Heavenly Gate Array, it is important to understand that this isn't just a physical barricade.
It's not just a cleverly disguised trench.
No, not at all. In Chinese esoteric military strategy, these arrays are complex, magical formations rooted in cosmic numerology.
Right, the number 72 corresponds to the 72 earthly themes.
Yes, which denotes chaotic terrestrial energies. So by establishing this array, Dongbin is physically manipulating the landscape. He is weaponizing the weather and utilizing spiritual illusions to completely disorient and trap the enemy.
It is a localized restructuring of reality designed to crush a conventional army, and the fallout is absolute devastation.
Completely.
Elder Guo reveals that the Song Dynasty army is completely trapped within this magical array, unable to break it. A mortal commander known as General Lu Lang has his life on the line.
And Elder Guo vividly describes the entire Song Dynasty as being as precarious as a stack of eggs.
As precarious as a stack of eggs, that is such a vivid image.
It really is. That phrase is a profound distillation of the mortal condition in this cosmology. It conveys an ultimate, terrifying fragility.
Because in the context of dynastic cycles, a ruling house requires immense stability.
Right. They need the mandate of heaven and constant alignment with cosmic forces just to survive. By comparing the dynasty to a stack of eggs, the text illustrates how easily that mandate can be shattered by outside interference.
And what bumps the table and threatens this delicate stack is nothing more than a divine being losing a debate. Because he lost an argument, he's orchestrating the downfall of a nation.
Exactly. Dongbin is orchestrating this purely to prove a point to his peers back in heaven.
That is insane. The mortals fighting for their lives in Nine Dragon Valley, shedding blood for their homeland, they are entirely unaware that the military genius orchestrating their demise is essentially acting out a celestial temper tantrum.
The text really highlights the terrifying vulnerability of humanity when enlightened beings decide to use the mortal realm as a sandbox for their personal rivalries.
The asymmetry of that power dynamic is chilling. The mortals are collateral damage in a celestial dispute that they cannot even comprehend. Hearing that a fellow immoral has gone rogue for spite, the chess players react, and it's deeply telling.
Right, so Zhongli, who was part of that original argument with Dongbin, goes completely silent.
He recognizes his own culpability in this escalating disaster. His silence is the realization that his previous intellectual debate has manifested as physical slaughter on Earth.
But Iron Crutch has a completely different reaction. He explodes in rage.
He physically pushes the chessboard away and stands up. He literally flips the board.
Transitioning from passive recreation to active fury.
And immediately, Iron Crutch launches into a furious defense of cosmic laws. He argues that heaven has a grand fixed destiny.
Yes, specifically stating that the boundaries between the Chinese and foreign nations, referred to as Hua and Yi, are definitively set.
Right, so explain that. The Hua and Yi boundaries.
The invocation of Hua and Yi is central to understanding Iron Crutch's argument and the worldview of the text. In ancient Chinese cosmology, Hua represents the civilized center, the cultural and moral axis of the world.
While Yi represents the periphery, the foreign, or the uncivilized.
Exactly, and this is not merely a political distinction. To Iron Crutch, it is a structural pillar of the universe itself. So by aiding the foreign Emperor Shao against the Song dynasty, Dongbin is not just participating in a war.
He is actively working to invert the cosmic order.
Yes. For Iron Crutch, the fixed destiny of nations is a mechanism of universal stability. He views Dongbin's actions as reckless, devoid of reason, and a direct violation of fundamental heavenly laws.
He fears the institutional precedent this sets. If Dongbin isn't punished, he will set a precedent that ruins the rules of the immortals forever.
Right, because if an immortal can casually descend to Earth and redraw the map of the world just because he's in a bad mood, the entire framework of immortal governance collapses.
Okay, but I want to push back on Iron Crutch's motivations here. Is Iron Crutch actually upset about the cosmic balance of the mortal realm? Or is he just a massive stickler for the rules who hates seeing a coworker go off script?
That is the million-dollar question.
Because when you look at his proposed solution, it feels far more personal than judicial. He threatens that if the group does not immediately unite to attack Dongbin, he will personally report the little beast, his exact words, to the heavenly court.
Yeah, he does not mince words.
And he doesn't just want him disciplined. He wants him banished so he can never be reincarnated. That is a massive leap from enforcing a border dispute to demanding the total erasure of a soul.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, your skepticism of Iron Crutch is exactly what the text invites. His extreme reaction reveals the intensely political nature of his worldview.
Because the heavenly court isn't exactly a realm of serene justice.
Not at all. It is depicted as a rigid bureaucracy where laws are used as blunt instruments to maintain hierarchy. To strip an immortal of reincarnation is the ultimate administrative execution.
It requires striking a name from the celestial ledgers, right?
Yes, permanently severing their connection to the cycle of rebirth and erasing their future existence across all realms. It is disproportionate.
And his compassion for the mortals trapped in the valley is conspicuously absent from his rant.
Exactly. His focus is entirely on punishing the breach of protocol. He is invoking the highest possible laws of the universe to justify a personal, bureaucratic vendetta against a colleague who dared to defy the established order.
It shows how quickly divine justice can look like a disproportionate personal vendetta. So the moment Iron Crutch places that ultimate threat on the table, the dynamic of the entire celestial group changes.
He forces an immediate crisis of allegiance.
Right. With Iron Crutch ready to unleash ultimate punishment, the rest of the Immortal Friend group has to choose sides and figure out a solution. And instantly, the group fractures into factions.
Immortals like Kaihe and Xianggu side with Iron Crutch.
They are swept up in his righteous indignation, feeling indignant and that the situation is unfair.
They align themselves with the strict interpretation of the law. But then there is Yanzi, who steps in to mediate and calm the escalating rage.
What is fascinating is the text's explicit reasoning for Xiangzi's intervention. He does not step in because he is an inherent pacifist or because he has a better strategic plan for the Song army.
Right. He steps in solely because he shares a special, historical bond with Dongbin. They have a deep connection based on past guidance and mutual support.
This introduces the concept of Guangxi into the celestial realm, right?
It does. Guangxi refers to the intricate, deeply rooted networks of relationships, mutual obligations, and social bonds that govern interactions in Chinese society. The text is projecting this fundamentally human sociological framework onto the immortals.
So Jiangxi's allegiance is dictated by his personal network, not by objective morality or cosmic law.
Exactly. He is willing to mediate on behalf of someone who is currently using demonic arrays to slaughter an army simply because they share a bond of martial brotherhood and past mentorship.
It creates this chaotic environment where the immortals are picking sides based on a volatile mix of institutional inertia and interpersonal Guangxi.
Right, with Iron Crutch representing the adherence to the rules and Xiangzi representing loyalty to a friend.
The tension between absolute law and personal loyalty brings everything to a standstill. And that is when Zhongli, the immortal, whose original argument with Dongbin started this entire chain of events, finally speaks up.
He steps into the role of the pragmatic fixer.
He tells the fractured group to calm their anger and volunteers to go down to the mortal realm to subdue Dongbin himself.
And Zhongli's proposed strategy is wonderfully devoid of any romanticized notions of celestial brotherhood.
Yeah, he tells the group that he will try to talk to Dongbin first, but if Dongbin stubbornly resists, they can all team up and attack him together later.
It is a very raw, realpolitik approach to conflict resolution. He is prioritizing the immediate neutralization of the threat over moral debate.
And Zhongli's pragmatism is necessary because of the ticking clock, which Elder Guo immediately reinforces. He warns Zhongli to hurry.
The temporal mechanics between heaven and earth are at play here. While the immortals debate the philosophy of their intervention, time is passing in the mortal realm.
Every second wasted on celestial politics means the foreign Empress Shao draws closer to a definitive victory.
And the Song dynasty inches closer to total collapse. The stack of eggs is actively wobbling.
Acknowledging the urgency, Zhongli summons a cloud and rides out, heading straight toward the magical battlefield of Nine Dragon Valley.
But it does not end there.
No, it doesn't. You would think that with the fixer dispatched, the crisis in the celestial realm would settle down. The appropriate measures have been taken. But Iron Crutch's anger isn't fully quelled.
He does not trust the resolution.
So in secret, he pulls aside Xianggu, one of the immortals who allied with his strict interpretation of the law, and he instructs her to follow Zhongli. He orders her to act as a spy.
To observe the confrontation and report back to him so he can decide his next move.
The incredible lack of trust here. Even among immortals, management sends a spy to ensure the fixer is actually doing their job. Iron Crutch is initiating a celestial intelligence operation against his own colleague.
This raises an important question about the persistence of bias and the impossibility of neutrality within complex hierarchies. Iron Crutch understands the web of Guangxi perfectly.
He knows that Zhongli shares a history with Dongbin, just as Jiangxi does.
Right. Because of that personal connection, Iron Crutch fundamentally doubts Zongli's ability to execute objective justice. He assumes that interpersonal loyalty will corrupt the enforcement of cosmic law.
Sending Xianggu as a spy is a manifestation of institutional paranoia.
It reveals a celestial realm where trust is non-existent, where every action is monitored, and where enlightenment does not preclude the need for espionage. It perfectly mirrors human organizational dynamics.
Where the surveillance of one's own allies is considered a necessary tool for maintaining power and control, we are left with this incredible image. Zhongli is flying on a cloud toward a massive reality-bending battlefield where an immortal is using a centuries-old tree spirit to crush a mortal empire.
And trailing just out of sight behind him is a celestial spy, taking mental notes for a bureaucratic rival.